want to talk through some of the tools that you're going to need to do your pattern drafting exercise. These are the same tools that you would use for the shoe, but also for any other form that you would be interested in pattern drafting. One thing that I find useful is some saran wrap, so that if I have to wrap my object in plastic to not get tape on the surface, I can utilize that. You'll want some different kinds of tapes to use. Blue painter's tape can work really good, especially if you're taping directly on the form, but you can also use just regular masking tape as well. I often like to have it in different widths. There's a little trick. If you only have one width and you need different widths, you can actually take a Sharpie, not a Sharpie, an X-Acto knife, and you could cut all the way around your tape, a couple layers in, and you could then get thinner strips of masking tape to work with. So if you need to in a pinch, you could go ahead and do that. You'll need a couple Sharpies so that you can draw your cut lines when you're all done. You'll need a few things to cut with as well. You could use a retractable blade. You could use an X-Acto knife, a scissors, or a combination of. One of the things I want to tell you about working with your sharp objects is to make sure that you're always really careful and aware of where you have your sharp blades. So one thing is that your X-Acto knives will have these little plastic lids on it. Please be careful when you are pulling the lid off of the handle, not to grab between the two as you pull this out, or you could end up cutting yourself with the blade. What you want to do instead is pinch the tip of the blade and pinch the handle and then wiggle this out, because sometimes this can be stuck onto that handle. This happens to not be the right cap for this handle, so it's fairly loose, but I just wanted you to see that you pinch the top and the handle, never grab in between that blade. I usually actually just keep mine in a little sheet of foam board when I'm not using. I also want to just briefly talk to you about taking care of blades. So when I pulled out my X-Acto knife, I realized that the blade for it was dull, and a dull blade is actually more dangerous than a sharp blade because it usually requires more pressure, and that's when you can end up slipping off of something and cutting yourself. So always make sure you have a good sharp blade, and when you're ready to dispose of your blade, you want to do one of two things, which is you either want to make a really simple DIY container that you can dispose of your sharps inside of. So I have this one labeled sharps. I've got a little slit cut into the top, and I could just drop this in there. If you use a lot of blades, this would be a good thing for you to do, is just to sort of make a giant collection of them, and then before you throw it away, tape the whole thing up really well. Make sure you label it before you toss it. But if you just have one or two to throw away every now and then, what you can do is take some masking tape and put the blade thoroughly inside of that masking tape until you are positive that it would not poke through that and cut someone. So I usually put quite a few layers on here. This is to protect yourself. It's to protect anyone else who's taking out the trash, people who might be sorting through bins, etc. So you just want to make sure that you are always wrapping those up so that they're not going to poke someone. Okay, so those would be the basic tools that you would need to get you started.